Some stories just hit you hard, completely out of nowhere, almost like getting yanked out of whatever boring routine you're stuck in. One minute you're folding laundry, or absent-mindedly scrolling through your phone with cold coffee sitting next to you. Then you stumble onto something so powerful, you forget the chores and just sit there, completely overwhelmed. Honestly, this is one of those stories. And I need to warn you, if you're someone who feels things deeply, if you start tearing up when love and loss spill over in the worst way, grab a box of tissues. What happened during Gene Hackman's last days isn't something you shake off easily, it sticks with you. Most of us grew up watching Hackman absolutely own the screen. He didn't even have to say a damn word, you just knew something big was about to happen. 2 Oscars, 4 Golden Globes, nearly 80 movies in 4 decades. He was Popeye Doyle in The French Connection. He was Little Bill in Unforgiven. Hackman was one of those rare actors who could slide into any role and make it seem effortless. And honestly, he was the gold standard in Hollywood. But then, almost without warning, Hackman stepped away from all the red carpets, interviews, and endless spotlights. He moved out to Santa Fe, living quietly with his wife Betsy, 2 German shepherds, and what looked like a life of real, hard-earned calm. But that's why this story feels like such a punch in the gut. On February 26 this year, both Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa were found dead at home in Santa Fe. Security staff saw them through a window, enough for a chill to go through anyone, and called the police. News broke, and suddenly, people everywhere were just stunned. The whirlwind of questions that followed, honestly, only made things worse. At first, people wondered if carbon monoxide was to blame. It's the kind of quick answer we all reach for, as if hoping bad news will somehow make more sense. But investigators ruled that out right away. What they uncovered next, though it was way more complicated and way more haunting, because in its own quiet, disastrous way, it was a genuine love story that lasted straight to the end. Let's dig into what actually happened. Betsy Arakawa was 65, and she died first, somewhere around February 12th, from hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. Most people don't even know what hantavirus is. It's rare. The entire US only sees about 50 cases a year. That's nothing compared to, say, West Nile virus, which racks up about 2,000 cases each year. Hantavirus is less common, but it's way deadlier. In the Southwest, it kills between 38% and 50% of those who catch it. Those numbers aren't just statistics, they're terrifying. So, how do you get infected? By inhaling or touching the virus, which hides in rodent urine, droppings, or saliva. And this is where the story gets even harder. A health check on the Hackman property revealed a massive rodent infestation. Not just a stray mouse behind the fridge, but droppings all over 3 garages, 2 casitas, 3 sheds, dead rodents, nests, you name it, scattered through 8 buildings on the estate. Even 2 vehicles had rodent nests in them. There were traps everywhere, meaning this was an ongoing fight, not just a one-time thing. Oddly enough, the main house, the spot where Gene and Betsy lived, was labeled low risk. No big infestation there. Somehow, though, Betsy came into contact with the virus. It started tearing through her system before she even realized what was happening. If you want to know what's so quietly devastating about all this, it's the fact that Betsy didn't have any clue she was dealing with hantavirus. Honestly, who would? Early symptoms look just like the flu, or COVID, or even a bad cold, headaches, dizziness, trouble breathing. Most of us would think the same thing she did. Investigators pieced together Betsy's last days from her internet searches, emails, and phone records, and what they found was a woman desperately trying to crack the mystery of her own illness, all while caring for Hackman at the same time. Between February 8th and 12th, Betsy's Google history was filled with searches for flu symptoms, breathing exercises, anything that felt like a lifeline. On February 10th, she typed in "Can COVID cause dizziness?" and "flu and nosebleeds." She was searching for answers, probably feeling scared and unsure, just like we all do at 2 a.m. when things don't feel right. The next day, February 11th, she bought oxygen canisters on Amazon. Try to picture that, struggling to breathe, sitting at your computer looking for something to help. Maybe she got them for herself, maybe for Gene, maybe for both. But she was trying everything, refusing to give up. That same day, Betsy emailed her masseuse to reschedule a session, worried about spreading illness since Gene woke up with flu-like symptoms, even though his COVID test was negative. Even as she was seriously ill, she was still thinking about others, protecting them. On what's believed was her last morning, Betsy called a medical concierge service 3 times, desperate for help. Later that afternoon, they called her back, but she didn't answer. She never got the treatment she needed. And sometime around February 12th, Betsy, talented pianist, loving wife, fiercely loyal caretaker, passed away after quietly standing beside one of Hollywood's greats for decades. So, just pause for a second, breathe, because what happened next is the part that makes all of this too hard to bear. Gene Hackman made it to 95, which is already remarkable in itself. But those last years, they were heavy, shaped by an advanced, relentless Alzheimer's disease. The autopsy spelled it out. His brain had deteriorated badly, showing all the microscopic hallmarks of a late-stage battle he'd been losing for years. And it didn't stop there. His body was marked by severe heart problems, a history of congestive heart failure, kidney disease, past heart surgeries, bypass grafts, a valve replacement. The list went on. You get the sense that his world had shrunk down to something fragile, almost ghostly. Most of his days probably blended together, the boundaries of self and place blurry, the house itself a sanctuary, but also a kind of prison. Investigators looked through everything, and the picture emerged. Gene might not have known his wife, Betsy, had died. The week after her death likely passed by without him understanding what had happened. The woman who'd been his partner, his caregiver, his link to normalcy, gone, and he was left in a silent fog. Then the autopsy turned up a detail that's strangely poignant. They found acetone in his system, 17 times higher than it should have been. That's what happens when your body's running on fumes, not food. Fasting-induced ketoacidosis, they call it. In plain terms, Gene didn't eat for around a week after Betsy died. Not a thing. Why? Maybe he couldn't manage the kitchen, maybe the Alzheimer's erased his sense of hunger, or it was just that no one else was there to bring food. It's impossible to know the full story, but what's certain is that he lived those final days alone, without nourishment, in the home he'd shared for decades. He died around February 18th. The cause was heart disease, with Alzheimer's as a contributing factor. 95 years old, and for about a week, he and Betsy lay in their quiet Santa Fe home, husband and wife, partners for more than 30 years, unseen and unknown to the wider world. Their beloved German shepherds gone too. The house perfectly still. Life outside moved on as if nothing had changed. No one realized anything was wrong until February 26th, nearly 2 weeks later, when workers finally noticed something was off. But honestly, I don't want to leave you with just the tragedy. There's more here than how it ended. What matters is how Gene and Betsy lived. They first met in Los Angeles, mid-1980s, at a fitness center where Betsy worked part-time. Gene was already Gene Hackman, movie star. Betsy, originally from Hawaii, was a classically trained pianist. They started dating in 1984 and married in 1991. For the next 30 years, and then some, they made an intentional life, away from Hollywood, away from gossip, just them. Gene, after a scare with his heart during a stress test, retired from acting in 2004. He told Empire magazine a few years later, "The doctor advised me that my heart wasn't in the kind of shape that I should be putting it under any stress, so he stopped. No dramatic farewell, no big press tour. He just turned the page. Life first, legacy second." He filled his retirement with writing novels, painting, living quietly. They moved to Santa Fe, rarely appearing in public. It wasn't until 2024 that anyone caught a photo of them together, outside a seafood restaurant in Albuquerque. Gene held Betsy's arm. He used a cane. The photos, grainy but real, felt almost like a gift, a glimpse into a love that had weathered everything, still standing. And the dogs, always dogs. In 1990, filming The Replacements in Baltimore, Gene found 2 stray dogs on set. He had them sent to a local shelter by limousine. Classic Hackman. He named them Gene for himself, and Keanu after Reeves. The next week, he and Betsy went to the shelter and adopted Gene. That shelter even posted a birthday tribute for him last year. Happy 94th birthday to our most famous adopter. It's a tiny detail, but it says so much. He wasn't just generous in the public eye, he was quietly warm, loving, without an audience. Gene's will from 1995 left everything to Betsy. In Betsy's will, if they died within 90 days of each other, their estate would go to charity. They were thinking about each other, even in the fine print, planning for every possibility. They died 13 days apart. After Betsy's death, hantavirus claimed 3 more lives in Mammoth Lakes, California. It's a good reminder, the disease is rare, but still out there. If you're cleaning a garage, attic, or anywhere rodents might have been, protect yourself. Wear masks, gloves, wet down surfaces before sweeping. Stirring up dust isn't worth the risk. People forget about this stuff until it's too late. Earlier this year, the investigation into their deaths became public after a court order. A judge in Santa Fe ruled that the investigative material could be released, but not the actual images of Gene and Betsy. Their estate's attorney argued they'd protected their privacy during life and deserved that same respect after death. I keep thinking about that, about how fiercely they worked to build a life away from all the noise. Gene Hackman gave the world nearly 80 films, performances people still talk about. But after all that, he made himself a private life, and he defended it right up to the end. Honestly, what gets me about this story isn't the mystery or the sadness, it's the love. Betsy, in her final days, was up late searching symptoms, ordering oxygen online, emailing to reschedule appointments, because she didn't want to expose anyone to whatever she was battling, calling for help 3 times on her last morning, still thinking of others. And Gene, frail and beloved, spent his last days in the home they'd built, unaware of his loss. Maybe, by some strange mercy, spared from grief the rest of us feel when we lose someone we can't imagine living without. They're together now, however you choose to think about that. What they've left behind isn't just heartbreak, but a story of 2 people who for 30 years chose each other, protected each other, and walked through life with love as their compass. Rest well, Gene. Rest well, Betsy. You earned your peace.